Hello, good morning, and welcome to the Sunday edition of A Proud Malcontent. I'm Peter A. Bell, and I am a proud malcontent. I have to ask you to bear with me if I'm a bit hoarse and sniffly today. I seem to have a wee allergy thing going on. At least I'm assuming that's what it is. I want to get right into it today before my voice goes completely. What I want to look at today is a couple of letters, mainly one letter, but a couple of letters that were in the National on the 22nd of July. Which was 5 days ago. I have no idea what day that was. I'm really not very good at keeping track of these things. Calendar is a mystery to me. Uh, that's one of the things that happens when you retire. These letters in the National, but they're both very important in their way. Let's first of all take a look at the first of these, and it's the one that's headlined. And the headline is, "Here's why John Swinney should ask Keir Starmer for a Section 30 now." Well, I think most people listening to this will be aware of my feelings about the Section 30 process. So I have to say to Patrick Johnson of Roo that he is very, very wrong. I was supposed to do an article on the reasons why asking for a Section 30 order is such a very, very bad idea. I haven't got that article written yet. Like so many things in my life, it's delayed, it's late. It's not because I purposefully put things off, it's because other things intrude. And mostly this past week has been having discussions, shall we say, on Facebook. I also had one of those intervals when I had an influx of British nationalist bots, trolls on my X timeline. And that can be a bit distracting, but mostly it's because I've been discussing, debating, disputing with people on Facebook, trying to get across the idea, the thinking behind Scottish UDI, and trying to put the stake through the heart of some of the sillier ideas, such as using the 2026 election as an independence referendum. There's supposed to be an article coming about that as well. But the one that we have to deal with today, the daft idea that we have to deal with today, is this whole business of John Swinney asking for a Section 30 referendum now. And I'm not going to go through all the reasons why this is a bad idea. I will quickly go through one, a timeline, a suggested timeline, a probable timeline for what would happen in this scenario of Patrick's idea of asking for a Section 30 referendum, a Section 30 order, if John Swinney were to do that now, which I should say, he shows absolutely no signs of doing. He has no other ideas besides requesting a Section 30 order. That is equally clear, but he's shown no indication of even the intention of asking for a Section 30 order should he be returned to government. He hasn't given any hint of what he would actually do on the constitutional issue if he was returned to government after the 2026 election. But Patrick is suggesting that he requests a Section 30 order now. So here's how I think it would go, or one of the ways that it could go. Because one of the things that people rarely consider is what happens if the British Prime Minister says yes? What happens if Sir Keir Starmer, I nearly choke on that name every time I say it, what happens if he actually turns around and says yes? John Swinney writes the letter to him. We all know the form by now. He writes that letter saying, please, can we have permission to have a sort of referendum like thing? And most people assume that Keir Starmer, the British Prime Minister, whoever it is at the time, will say no. That has been the record up until now. It's a constant no. Now is not the time. Never saying a flat no, never, because they know that that would be contrary to the UN Charter. If they were to say that we must never have another referendum, they would be then crossing a line that they don't want to cross. It'll be a constant refrain of now is not the time, except if it isn't. What if Keir Starmer turns round and says yes? Tomorrow, John Swinney sends that letter. Keir Starmer on Tuesday comes back and says, aye, okay. He doesn't talk like that, by the way. He comes back and says, aye, okay, you're on. You can have your referendum. What happens next? John Swinney seizes it with both hands. He's thinking, right, I'm going to be the hero of the independence movement. Here, I've got this new referendum. Way for me. They'll all be applauding me. They'll be throwing rose petals before me as I walk along the street. He'll be wrong, of course, but yeah, he's not. We can't expect him to realise that. So John Swinney grabs it with both hands, says, yes, yes, let's have that referendum. Then, after John Swinney's agreed to the referendum, agreed to take the Section 30 order that he's asked for, well, he can hardly turn it down, having asked for it. He could pause for thought, belatedly pause for thought, but he could pause for thought and think about what's going to happen next. Because what happens next is that Keir Starmer starts slapping on the conditions onto this Section 30 order. He starts making all the rules about when the referendum can be, the time limits on holding the referendum, and what the franchise must be, and possibly even things like a special limit, a qualified majority. Sorry, the term wouldn't come to me. A qualified majority, like the notorious 40% rule. He could come up with all sorts of things like that, and essentially making this referendum, this Section 30 referendum, unwinnable for the yes side. And of course, it doesn't matter if it is winnable. It doesn't matter if we win, because a Section 30 referendum cannot lead to independence because it is consultative and non-self-executing. Nothing actually happens because of a yes vote, Section 30 referendum. It's left then to the British government to decide what happens next. And if they decide, well, nothing happens next, then that's it. That is the nature of a Section 30 referendum. So Sir Keir Starmer slaps on all these conditions. John Swinney realises belatedly that he's trapped. He's absolutely trapped because A, he thoughtlessly requested the Section 30 order, and B, when it was offered, he grabbed it with both hands without waiting to see what conditions were applied to it. So now he's trapped. He's either the First Minister who settled for an unwinnable referendum, or he's the First Minister who turned down the opportunity of a referendum. So he really can't win in this situation. And basically, the referendum goes ahead, and as I say, it makes no difference, win or lose. There's not anything that ensues from it. So it makes no difference, except win or lose, we'll be told that we've had our second referendum, and the British state will then have an excuse for putting some sort of time limit on the period that must expire before we can even think about another referendum. They can't really do that at the moment. Now is not the time, as specific as they can get, because according to the UN Charter, they're not allowed to put any constraints on our exercise of our right of self-determination. That's supposed to be entirely up to us, according to the UN. According to the British, it's entirely up to them. Like everything else, the British, they are at the centre as far as the British are concerned. They're in charge of everything. So it's a disaster in two ways. A, because we can't get anything out of it, and B, because it will be counted as our second referendum. And even if it doesn't happen, even if supposing John Swinney turns it down, it will still be counted as that second referendum. We'll have had it, or we'll at least have had the offer of it, and that offer was turned down. So it's a step backwards. I should also point out that requesting a Section 30 order is an act of treachery. It really is a treasonous act. And that's because the people of Scotland are sovereign. And being sovereign means that you are the highest authority in the land. You're the highest authority, the ultimate authority. So when John Swinney or any other First Minister requests a Section 30 order, they are acceding to Westminster's veto on our right of self-determination. They are saying that it's not our word that is last, it is the British state's word that is last, because that is the nature of a Section 30 referendum. It leaves the last word to the British state. So John Swinney would be denying the sovereignty of the people of Scotland, because he would be accepting the sovereignty of Westminster, the sovereignty of Parliament. He would be putting Westminster at the top as the ultimate authority, the ultimate political authority. And denying the sovereignty of Scotland's people, that is the principle which underlies our whole democracy, our whole constitutional ethos. So to deny that is to deny something that's absolutely essential to Scotland, and that is why I say it'd be a treacherous act. However, enough on that. There are many other reasons for not requesting a Section 30 order, but I think the fact that it would be unwinnable, it wouldn't matter if we won, and that it's an act of treachery, I think those are sufficient reasons for saying to Patrick, no, that is not going to work. That is not good enough. However, if we scroll down the page, we find another letter, and this one is much more interesting. This one is from Mike Wallace of Edinburgh Newington branch of the SNP. And it is extremely interesting. Excuse me, I need a little sip of water. It's extremely interesting. I will read the whole letter. I know some of you prefer listening to reading, so I will read the whole letter because it is an important letter. This is Mike Wallace, Newington branch, the SNP, Newington, Edinburgh. My recent letters to the National are aimed at promoting the action that should be the first step in either exercising that right to choose in any referendum or gaining the decisive level of support that would be required for a future election to be the democratic event that can lead to independence. Getting a mandate from the 2026 election on a manifesto pledge to bring forward in the first year a bill at Holyrood to assume responsibility for constitutional affairs as directed by the people of Scotland will be just such an action. The Newington branch of the SNP has submitted for annual conference in October a resolution titled Manifesto for Scotland's Right to Decide. This motion asks conference to agree, firstly, that seeking a Section 30 order from the UK government to hold a referendum on Scotland's constitutional future undermines Scotland's sovereign right to decide. And secondly, that sovereignty lies with the Scottish people, not Westminster. The final paragraph reads, therefore, Conference agrees that the SNP shall put in their manifesto for the 2026 Scottish Parliament election that if a majority of SNP and other pro-independence MSPs are returned to Holyrood in 2026, they will bring forward a bill to assume responsibility for constitutional affairs as directed by the people of Scotland. This will include the right to hold referendums on increased powers and independence, driven by the will of the people. Considerable pressure applied both from within the SNP and from the wider independence movement may well be required to see this commitment get on the agenda for conference and then hopefully adopted as our principal manifesto offer for 2026. I actually missed out a part of that letter because it wasn't actually the relevant part because it's critical of John Swinney's recently announced 3-point plan for restoring independence, which of course is just a reiteration of the nonsense that they've been talking for 10 years on this subject. But one of the things that Mike Wallace does is he refers to a campaign built around Scotland's right to choose requires what Peter A. Bell, that's me folks, recently described as a solid commitment to specific action within a defined time frame. That is exactly what's required, and that is what what I shall from henceforth refer to as the Newington resolution. That is what it refers to. This, as I say, I don't mind repeating this. This is very important. This is a move. Now, I've known Mike for many years, and I know him as one of the people who remained in the SNP when people such as myself walked away. He remained, and he's been working hard from within the SNP to restore it as the party of independence. That is important because there is no post-election scenario in which the SNP is not required for the 2026 election to be the democratic event which initiates the process by which Scotland's independence is restored. And the reason for that's easily explained. I get a lot of stick for saying this, that the SNP is essential in this fight to restore independence. There are a lot of people, I refer to them as SNP haters, who want to have nothing to do with the SNP. Well, it doesn't matter whether you have nothing to do with the SNP. The SNP is still going to be there after 2026, and that is what matters. According to the polls, as you can see on your screen now, I hope, the SNP are looking at losing 10 seats, but they will still be by far the largest party in the parliament and probably the party of government, even if it's in some sort of coalition type thing with the Greens, or possibly, it's a remote possibility, but possibly with Alapa or some other of the so-called alternative independence parties. So the SNP is crucial. They would be crucial to the process, even if they were reduced to a rump. Even if, as the SNP haters hope, the SNP was reduced to a handful of seats in Parliament, really severely punished by the electorate, then they would still be essential, because every single pro-independence vote would be required for any measure to be successful. What Mike talks about is a bill to assert the Scottish Parliament's powers over constitutional affairs. If that sounds familiar, it's because it's exactly the same as the Manifesto for Independence. Newington Branch resolution is called a Manifesto for Scotland's Right to Decide, but they are basically the same thing. They're basically the same idea. They're built on the same thinking. So the SNP is still going to be there. And Gordon Darge made a comment on Facebook this morning about how he, at a street stall for the pro-independence campaign, I don't know exactly what group it was that he was working with, but they had a street stall, and he was saying how all the members of the public that they spoke to, all they knew about was the SNP. When they were talked to about independence, all they knew about was the SNP. Independence, the constitutional issue, was all about the SNP, and the SNP was all about independence. And that is the way it is. And that is why we have to assume the only safe assumption is that the SNP will still dominate Scottish politics after the 2026 election. It is a fact that the electorate are always at least one electoral cycle behind activists, political anoraks who are actually paying attention to every little thing that goes on. The electorate, the general public, simply aren't aware of these things. They don't become aware until much later. Here we are, 5 years after, approximately 5 years after Alapa party was launched, and people are barely aware, the general public are barely aware of Alapa. They are, from Gordon's findings, and I see no reason to think that he's got this wrong. they aren't aware at all of any of the other pro-independence, nominally pro-independence parties. So it may be frustrating for the SNP haters, but it remains a fact. As far as we can have any facts, the polls tell us, and that's the best information we have. The polls tell us the SNP is going to be the largest party, and at the very least, they're going to be a large party. They're going to be a large part of the parliament. Therefore, they are going to be essential. Their participation is going to be essential if any measures, such as the bill to assert the Scottish Parliament's legislative competence in constitutional affairs, if that is to pass, SNP votes will be required, all of them, because the majority in the Parliament is not going to be huge. The nominally, that's always in brackets, the nominally pro-independence majority is not going to be huge. There's reasons for that as well, but the fact is it's not going to be huge. If the SNP got a majority on its own, that would be a minor electoral miracle. If the SNP managed to form a functioning minority government, that would be not quite so surprising. If it got some sort of agreement from the Greens, which are the only other nominally pro-independence party that's shown in the polls, if they got some sort of arrangement going with the Greens, it just might be that they would manage to govern after a fashion for 5 years. But as things stand, it would mean that the constitutional issue is right off the table, because neither the Greens nor the SNP have any proposals for action of any kind, unless the Newington resolution is adopted at conference. Even then, there's a big question mark over it, because the SNP leadership is well known for just simply ignoring conference these days. The rules have been changed, the constitution has been changed, so that the conference is really just a debating chamber. It's a talking shop, and the leadership don't feel bound in any way to take seriously anything that's decided at conference. But as Mike Wallace points out, if he's to get that, if Newington branch, it's not just Mike, but Mike's the guy that I know. If that Newington resolution is to get through the selection process, which is the first hurdle, it has to get through the selection process to get on the agenda for the October conference, SNP conference in October. It's going to need massive support, and that cannot just be support from within the SNP, because that doesn't get across to the general public. It has to be support from the wider independence movement. We should all be talking about the Newington resolution between now and October. We should all be talking about it. We should be writing letters to the press about it. We should be saying the SNP leadership must accept this resolution. Conference Agenda Committee must accept the resolution, and the delegates must pass it, and the leadership must accept it and act on it. And if enough of us are driving that, then perhaps we will have done one of the most important things that we could do for Scotland's cause. We'll have got the SNP back on side. And as I've already explained, it is absolutely essential to get the SNP back on side, because according to the polls, they are going to have 54 seats in the Parliament after the 2026 election. And even if they only had 4, those 4 votes would still be required. So whatever way you look at it, the SNP is essential. Getting them on board is essential. And that's what the Newington resolution is all about. So we have to support that. We have to. It's absolutely crucial. There's two groups that I am very dubious about. And that's people, the SNP haters, the people who say we should discount the SNP altogether. We should uh, uh, set them aside, just not have anything to do with them. And they chastise me, they castigate me for saying that the SNP is going to be the largest party in the Parliament after the 2026 election. Although that's not me saying it, that's the polls that are saying it. And they accuse me of being a shill for the SNP, of supporting the SNP, and of trying to persuade people to vote for the SNP. It's utter nonsense. I am no lover of the SNP. I'm as disappointed and angry with them as anybody. I quit the party. I've been in the party for about 60 years, and I quit the party because I was so disappointed and frustrated and angry. So I'm hardly one to be promoting the SNP, and I don't tell anybody how to vote. My aim in my blogging and now in these broadcasts is to help people understand the implications of their vote. To understand, for example, that voting for any of the nominally pro-independence parties as they are, as things stand, is a vote for another 5 lost years on top of the 10 that we've already lost, because there are no proposals for any kind of action on the constitutional issue. So I'm a bit dubious about these people. I mean, what is their agenda? If it's as if either they actually want to sabotage Scotland's cause by removing that essential component of it, which is still the SNP, whether we like it or not, or whether it's just that to them, their hatred of the SNP is the most important thing and not the cause. They put their own feelings first ahead of Scotland's cause. Either way, I can only disapprove. I'm in favour of taking a rational, pragmatic view of these things and a rational and pragmatic approach to these things. So we just have to accept that the SNP is going to be there and is going to be essential, because there really is no way that we can prevent that. We can campaign against the SNP. That's not very clever, but we can campaign for other nominally pro-independence parties, and maybe get one or two of them elected. But that will not alter the fact that the SNP is still going to be the largest party. I keep coming back to that because it is such an important fact. It has to be accepted by people, and many people simply will not accept it. The other group that I'm very dubious about are the people who discount the Scottish Parliament, who say that we should have nothing to do with the Scottish Parliament, that it's a British institution, that's an arm of the Westminster Parliament, an arm of the British state, and that it will never restore independence, and so on. And this is just so wrong, because only the Scottish Parliament can restore Scotland's independence. Scotland's independence will be restored, if at all, by an act of the Scottish Parliament, an act in the same sort of league as the one that Mike Wallace is suggesting, the act to restore to the Scottish Parliament legislative competence in constitutional affairs, because that is the Parliament's right. It is Scotland's Parliament. We elect it. It is a democratically elected Parliament of Scotland's people. Whatever that is, it has been usurped by the British state. Of that, there is no doubt. At present, it acts, the Parliament and the Scottish Government act as agents of the British state. But that is precisely the thing that we are trying to change. Independence means changing that. It means changing things so that the Scottish Parliament actually acts as the Scottish Parliament, and changing things so that the Scottish Government behaves like a government of Scotland instead of an agent of the British state. It's simply not conceivable that we can erase all of that infrastructure completely and build an entire new edifice in its place. That's not conceivable, and it's not right anyway. This is a campaign about taking back what is ours, taking back independence, taking back our government, taking back our parliament, and then taking back our nation. That is it. That is the independence campaign. That is Scotland's cause in a nutshell. So the people who say that we should totally discount the Scottish Parliament, they too, like the people who are saying we should totally discount the SNP, they are. It's as if they are trying to remove from Scotland's cause this essential thing, this essential component. And whether they're doing it from malice or from ignorance, or because they're or from prejudice, because their feelings, their anti-SNP and anti-Scottish Parliament feelings are so strong, it doesn't really matter, because the end result is the same. We lose these essential components. If these people get their way, we lose these essential components. The other group, there is a third group that has to be mentioned in this category, and that is the SNP loyalists. Mike Wallace is the very opposite of an SNP loyalist, which doesn't mean that he's not loyal to the party. In fact, I would say he is more loyal to the SNP, and certainly loyal to the founding spirit of the SNP, than anybody in the leadership, and I include John Swinney. And I have no hesitation in saying this. Mike Wallace represents what the SNP should be, what it used to be, and what it should be again. What it will have to be again if Scotland's cause is to make any progress. The opposite of Mike Wallace are the SNP loyalists who say everything the Scottish National Party does is fine. It's all good. They're working hard for Scotland. They're governing Scotland well. They've done a wonderful job up until now, and they're fighting for independence. Well, I can accept some of the early part of that statement. They have done some good things. You know, they've at least attempted to mitigate some of the impositions of the British state. They've attempted to address child poverty. They've attempted to address things like inequality of access to education, and they've had some success. I grant you that. I've no objection on that count. They are at least making the effort. They will never succeed to any great extent, because devolution will not allow them to succeed. The British state will not allow them to succeed, because remember, the Union is all about maintaining England as Britain's relative advantage over Scotland, overwhelming advantage. That is what the Union is all about. That's what it was about originally, and it's still what it is about today. So the SNP loyalists are the people who refuse to even contemplate the kind of thing that Mike Wallace and Newington branch of the SNP, the kind of thing that they are suggesting, what the Newington resolution is all about. that kind of change, which is essential for the SNP if it's to serve Scotland's cause once again. And Scotland's cause requires the SNP. We've already been through that, but I will keep on repeating it. These people are a serious obstacle and as serious a danger to Scotland's cause as the people who want to discount the SNP and the Scottish Parliament altogether, because they are an obstacle to the kind of change that the Newington Resolution seeks to create within the SNP. This first move towards reclaiming our Parliament. And it should be understood that what the Manifesto for Independence does and what the Newington Resolution, the Manifesto for Scotland's Right to Choose, what both these things do is a de facto declaration of independence. And that's because when you have legislative competence, when you have full powers over constitutional affairs, you have powers over everything, because the Constitution overarches everything. The Constitution is about power and how it's used, who gets it, how they get it, how they can forfeit it, how it's used, who benefits from it. That's what the Constitution is about. It lays down the rules and the principles that govern the use, the obtaining and the use and the forfeiture of political power in Scotland. That's what the Constitution is all about. So if you have control over that, you have control over everything. So it is a de facto declaration of independence. It just goes kind of in a roundabout way about it, a slightly roundabout way. And it does that because going headlong at the issue, such as saying the 2026 election should be a referendum on independence, it's too direct, it's too clumsy. It's a simplistic idea, and that's why it appeals to the career politicians. They don't like the job of explaining even slightly complicated things to the public. They're not confident of their ability to do it, and they have good cause not to be confident. An independence referendum, a de facto independence referendum, is easy to sell. It makes for easy electioneering, and that's what these politicians are all about. It's all about the electioneering. It's all about electoral success. It's not about Scotland's cause. It's not about restoring independence. It's about them getting elected. That's the way their minds work. They're career politicians. So the asserting Scotland's legislative competence, the Scottish Parliament's powers over constitutional affairs, is a de facto declaration of independence because it's asserting powers over everything. But it goes at it in this roundabout way because it makes it a human rights issue. Because it makes it about the right to choose, as the Newington Resolution puts it. It makes it about our right of self-determination. That is a human right. It's an inalienable right. It cannot be taken from us. And implied by the right of self-determination is the right to exercise that right. It's meaningless if you don't have the way of exercising it, and that's what the British state, with the complicity of the Scottish government acting as its agent, wrongly acting as its agent, that is what they are doing. They're trying to obstruct, impede, put obstacles in front of our access to the right of self-determination, the means of exercising the right of self-determination, which is a referendum, a proper constitutional referendum. That is the UN's preferred way, and it's also my preferred way, because in a proper constitutional referendum, you settle the matter. You settle the matter once and for all. You get a conclusive answer, a decisive, conclusive answer, and not just a result, but a decision, because a proper constitutional referendum is determinative and self-executing. So that you know exactly what happens if there's a yes vote, and hopefully what happens if there's a no vote. Although the British state has never been very good at making it clear what happens if there's a no vote, but you definitely know what happens if there's a yes vote. Exactly what happens, exactly what the next moves are. So the Newington resolution is about the SNP putting into its manifesto this proposal for a bill before Parliament, which which will effectively be a unilateral declaration of independence, but it will do it by way of human rights, a defence of the human rights. Excuse me. And that means, excuse me, bumping the mic there. That means that we have a distinct advantage should the British state choose to challenge, should they choose to mount a legal challenge, because we will be defending a human right. They would then be attacking a human right. They would be trying to deny a human right. If they were against us, that's implicit. It would be unavoidable, which is precisely why I think there's a very good chance that they may decide not to challenge it, because you can't really see any way they could possibly win in court. I mean, it would go to the European Court of Human Rights or the International Court of Justice, so they wouldn't be able to depend on the UK Supreme Court, which they usually can. But because it's a human rights issue, it would go to international courts, and they would lose. They would lose. And one of the reasons that they would lose is because one of the arguments, they would only have two possible arguments. One is that Scotland is not a nation, Scotland's people are not sovereign, Scotland doesn't have the right of self-determination. Well, you know, they've already conceded that Scotland has the right of self-determination. So how could they? That's not something you can just switch on and off at will. Alternatively, they could argue that we already have a democratic route to exercising a right of self-determination, and that is the Section 30 process. And that is why it's vital that the Section 30 process be repudiated right now. Not as has been suggested in that letter to the National, not that Section 30 request should go in, and thereby validating the Section 30 process, so that when the British government goes to court, it can say that, oh, the Scottish government has already accepted this. They've already accepted that the Section 30 route is a valid democratic route to the exercise of the right of self-determination. They've just requested the Section 30 order again, so they can hardly deny it. That is why it has to be repudiated now. That's one of the reasons that it has to be repudiated now. And other than those two arguments, it's difficult to see what else they could argue. So my feeling is that there's a very good chance that the British state could back down at that point. And that's another reason why going by way of what is suggested in the Manifesto for Independence and the Manifesto for Scotland's Right to Choose, from as stated in the Newington resolution, going about it that way is a winner. Going at it directly as a a de facto referendum on independence is a loser, because if you ask the what next question, there isn't an answer. And if you look closely at what the SNP has proposed in the past, I can't refer to what they're proposing now because that's never very clear. It's either nothing or not very much. ALPA, it's a bit more clear. All they're proposing is that if there's a majority of pro-independence, you can read in for yourselves the nominally now. If there's a majority of pro-independence MSPs after the 2026 election, there should be immediate negotiations for independence with Westminster. Now, that's the actual phrase that's used, and it's used several times in the statement of ALPA Party's strategy. Negotiations for independence. And that phrase is a euphemism for a Section 30 request, a request for a Section 30 order. It can't be anything else, because there is nothing else that the British state, that Westminster, would conceivably concede. There's nothing else it would negotiate about. It couldn't be negotiations for independence anyway, because that what next assumes that the people of Scotland have already voted for it. They've already voted for independence by electing a majority of supposedly pro-independence MSPs. And we're sovereign, people are sovereign. Therefore, that's the last word on the matter. Why would they be negotiating for independence with Westminster when we have already spoken? That is wrong in that sense. And it's also wrong in the sense that it can only be a request for a Section 30 order, which is cunningly concealed. In the past, when the SNP were talking about a Section 30 request, or when they were talking about using the election as a de facto independence referendum, such as when Humza Yousaf was briefly First Minister. I think the phrase that he used was, in the event of an effective yes vote in this de facto referendum on independence, in the event of this effective yes vote, they would demand that Westminster give democratic legitimacy to that decision. Give democratic legitimacy to it. That is the euphemism that Humza Yousaf came up with for a Section 30 request, because that is what it is. It can't be anything else, because the British government aren't going to give anything else. That's all it can be. And it's as offensive as the ALPA Party's proposal, because why would we be seeking for Westminster to give democratic legitimacy to a decision, a choice made by Scotland's people? Does that not have democratic legitimacy of its own? Is it not automatically democratically legitimate? Why should it need some external agency to give it democratic legitimacy? So be very wary of these nominally pro-independence parties. They will not be proper independence parties until they adopt something like the Newington Resolution. That is where we are. Right, there's a comment coming in. I'm probably repeating myself quite a lot there, but I've discovered I do dislike repeating myself, but I've realised that it's absolutely essential. You have to keep repeating these fundamental facts, such as the fact that the SNP is going to be a major part and an essential component of any measure in the 2026 Parliament. These facts have to be repeated because they've got to be driven into people's minds, and they have to be repeated because we hope eventually that this thinking will get across to the public. If we remember Gordon Darge's message saying that the public just ain't getting it, that's only to be expected. That's always been the way it is. But if we are to get the message across, then repetition is the only way. And the most effective form of repetition is sharing. When you share the likes of this podcast, this live stream, when you share it as a podcast, and when you share blog articles, for example, about the UN initiative, the Salvo Liberation initiative, or when you share the likes of Mike Wallace's letter to the National, all of these things help to get the word out there. So one message come in, Tex Thompson says Section 30 has been corrupted by Westminster by ignoring a majority in the Scottish Parliament requesting it. Well, that is just the nature of the Section 30 process. I wrote an article, I think it's about 6 years ago. It was published in iScot magazine, an excellent magazine, by the way. Subscribe, support Scottish media. The article is called, the Section 30 is not Scotland's salvation. And it points out all the reasons, or pointed out all the reasons then why I thought that the Section 30 process should be repudiated. It should be utterly rejected. Well, quite honestly, it didn't need Westminster to ignore the majorities in the Scottish Parliament to corrupt it. It's there. It's a sort of belt and braces measure by the British state. It's there to ensure that the Scottish Parliament can never get above itself. Because what Section 30 says basically is that Her Majesty, it was Her Majesty's government at the time, the British government can alter the reserved powers. It can alter the powers of the Scottish Parliament in any way and at any time without giving any reason and without asking anybody. So it is basically just a way of them ensuring that the Scottish Parliament can never get above itself, that it can never be an instrument of Scotland's nationalist movement. That is yet another reason why it should be repudiated. It is there to keep us down. It's there to serve the British state. It's not there to allow us to have a referendum. That was an extraordinary use of the Section 30 process for the 2014 referendum. And Alex Salmond is to be congratulated. That was the only thing that he could get at the time. That was the best that he could do. That was the best that anybody could do at that time, was a Section 30 referendum. And he had to deliver a referendum. And it could be argued that we had to go through that process of having a Section 30 referendum just in order so that we would know how pointless it is and how dangerous it is. I have another message from John Love. Given the state of England's economy, surely Scotland withdrawing from the Union would hurt them so badly that they'd try to claim Scotland's resources by force. I don't think they would do so by force, John. I think, quite honestly, the generals would have a wee quiet word about that. And the governments only issue commands to the armed forces when they know those commands are going to be accepted. And with the experience that the British Army has had elsewhere, we have to mention Northern Ireland in this regard. I think the military top brass would be very much opposed to any police action in Scotland. It would be disastrous. No, what I think the British state is likely to do, and we're now running over time. I have no objections to that at all. But what I think the British state will do, as I said, they don't really have a case when the Scottish Parliament asserts legislative competence over constitutional affairs. The British state doesn't really have a case, a winnable case to challenge that. So my suspicion is that at that point, or at some point around then, they will seek negotiations. What they can't get by pseudo-democratic political means, they will seek to get by way of negotiation. They will assume that they have the upper hand in any negotiation. That is the point at which they get really dangerous, and that is the point at which we will need some top flight people in and around the Scottish government. They will need to be absolutely determined and resolute. They must not buckle. They must not bend at all to British demands. But I think they will offer negotiations, seeking to get the best deal that they can. They will, at some point, they will be resigned to the fact that Scotland will be restoring independence, and they will seek to limit that independence in every way that they can. And they will also seek to maintain access to Scotland's resources. And we should allow them access, but only on our terms. That is the point. Now, this isn't about impoverishing England. That wouldn't be of any benefit to us. An impoverished southern neighbour, impoverished, much larger southern neighbour, one of our main trading partners. You know, talk about cutting off your nose to spite your face. That would be some dreadful self-harm. No, it would be in our interest to ensure that England is able to prosper. We can't interfere in their government at all. It would be a question of how their government uses those resources, and they wouldn't have free access to those resources anymore. They would be accessing them on our terms. So there would be an impact, but it would be for the government in Rump UK to decide best how they deal with that impact, and it would be up to the people of Rump UK to elect a government that best said that convinced them that they had the best way of dealing with it. Having said that, John Love, I have no doubt there will be voices in England calling for invasion. You know, a bit of northward rushing rebellious Scots to crush. There will be voices calling for that. I could easily imagine one of those voices being Mr. Farage. But I don't think those voices will get the upper hand at all. I don't think they will be listened to. Okay, folks, as I said, we're running late. It's now 4 minutes past 11, and I don't mind running late. I don't mind at all. I don't mind giving them my time. If there's a discussion going, then I will keep the program going. But my voice is starting to go, so I'm going to call it a day for the moment. I will be back with you on Wednesday. And don't ask me what date that is, because, as I said, I'm no use with calendars, but you will be notified. In the meantime, when this live stream is made available as a podcast on WordPress and Substack, as well as on YouTube, I hope you will share it as widely and as often as possible. And as ever, I implore you to sign the Manifesto for Independence petition. That is another way of backing up the Newington Resolution, because they're both calling for the same thing. One is calling for it internally within the SNP. The other is calling for it throughout the independence movement. So they're both essential. I'll be back with you on Wednesday. Bye.